it will, I think the light will show up when we have gone live officially.
This meeting is now streaming live on Facebook.
Okay, awesome. It's showing up in my browser. It's taking a second. I'm reloading this because I want to share this in the group. There it is. Well, welcome everybody. We're going to let people come on in for a second. I'm going to share this into the Victorious Life Collective. Beautiful. And I'm going to keep an eye on this, on the chat for this video too. So I really want everybody to feel free to comment, ask any questions as we're talking. We can pause at any time. I'm Victoria Labecki. I am an intuitive teacher and coach, and we're here with Christina Luna, author and speaker. And Christina, thank you so much for doing this with me, because I think our friendship is one of those delightful relationships in my life right now. So I'm so happy that we get to collaborate, not only about this, but already in this space of a delightful relationship. So thank you for being my friend.
Thank you. That's great. I love it too. Thank you.
I know. And it's great because I think for us, at least, it was very much like a knowing.
Yeah. Well, we connected through alchemy last year. And then when the two of us commented, I think we just commented on each other's posts, and there was that immediate, like, we need to connect. Let's talk about this now. And that's been my recipe. As soon as I feel that call to connect, or that compelling feeling to do the next exciting thing, then I just do it. And it leads to things like this. So
it does. And I know. And we're so guided. Like, that's the beauty of all of this, is like, we don't need to figure it out on our own. We can just kind of feel our way around it and use our intuition and kind of, and knowing. We just have a knowing about it. So anyway, I want to thank everybody for coming. We've already got a few viewers joining us. So thanks for being here, guys. And let's go ahead and start with delightful relationships. And there's 3 tips that Christina and I want to talk about today. The first tip is self-care and self-love. And the reason that this is so huge is because I think what is happening right now on a worldwide scale for most people is this awakening, this realization that life can be better than this. And it's because our circumstances are almost uncontrollable. And so we're kind of forced to look at our life from a different perspective. And because of that, we are able to look at our relationships differently, whether it's a romantic relationship, a marriage, or friendships, or even just the dynamics that we have in our family, and realizing that it's not okay the way it is. A lot of what can contribute to that is the fact that we give ourselves away too much. We can forget ourselves and start focusing too much on the other person, start focusing too much on how is my partner feeling? How is my partner going to behave today? How can I control this circumstance? And it can be called codependency, right? That need to control another person just to feel safe in your own space. And that happens when we lose sight of who we are, what we want, when our bucket is empty. And it could be a habit from childhood, whatever the story is. The fact is we can change it right now. The fact is that we can choose to see things differently. And a big shift to make is start caring about yourself. Start making sure that you are full, complete, a whole person, and doing what it takes to get there. Making sure that you're listening to, like, what is my soul's calling? What are the things that delight me in my life? Do I need to go take care of someone else's children because they asked me, or do I really need to take care of myself in this, in this moment of decision making? And when we start shifting our decisions and becoming more present in this moment, here and now, and really tuning into ourselves. And there's this beautiful exercise that you can do, and it has to do with your inner child. And asking yourself at age 1, right? The little 1-year-old inner child that's within all of us, and asking, how do you feel about this decision? How do you feel if I go on a date with this man? And and your inner child can tell you, I don't like it. I don't feel like it's going to be, like I just don't feel like it's right. Or your inner child can say, I feel safe with this person. And it's this amazing dynamic of like parenting your inner child. And you can do some research on that. I'm not going to get too much into that, but that's just another aspect of that self-care, because if we weren't having that fulfilled experience as our own in our own childhood, we can do that now, and we can be the parent to our inner child right now. And it's this beautiful, beautiful exercise that I think a lot of us can benefit from, in those ways. Christina, I know you have something to say about this topic too.
Well, what's funny, at the beginning of this year, I thought I was really smart. Like, I thought I had a lot of things figured out. I thought I had this process. I'd taken all these classes and I was writing a book. And I had this identity that I had a lot of things. I was doing okay. And
Mhm.
then, yeah, and I had plenty of behaviors to support that, right? Like I I was I was separated from from someone I was in relationship with on and off for several years, and I was thinking like, oh yes, I'm like becoming sovereign. I'm bold. I've got good boundaries. I'm taking leaps. I'm doing what's healthy for me. I'm creating this self-love. And then the kind of social space, the social distancing began. And I started to lose some of the behaviors and coping mechanisms and strategies that that kept me feeling like super sovereign, like that kept me like just thinking that my shit didn't stink. And a part of my language, but like I actually tumbled into a deep humility. And while I was listening to you, Victoria, I was like, yes, everything you're saying is absolutely true. And what is the actual execution of that? Like, what does that really mean on a practical, tangible level? Because all of these sound like amazing concepts, and then when you're faced with like being completely alone in your house and having zero people to hold you and comfort you and remind you of how awesome and amazing and smart you are because they have problems that you get to solve, like that's a very lonely space. And I'll be honest, this year humbled me down. And like I my identity has shifted tremendously. And what I've learned is that the parts of me that I was still buffering myself from had a lot to do with these emotions I didn't want to feel. There are certain emotions I didn't want to feel: loneliness. I didn't want to feel that that I was the one who had stepped in the poop. Like I didn't want to feel the patterns that had contributed to the deterioration of all of my past relationships. I didn't want to take responsibility for the parts of me that were avoidant to intimacy, that were afraid of being abandoned. I didn't want to face those. I didn't want to face the insecurity of my partner potentially finding someone else more attractive or more desirable or more business savvy or whatever than I was. There was a whole spectrum of feelings that I did not want to feel. And I was placed front and center with those feelings and those parts of me during this quarantine. And I had all of the tools. I had all this wisdom. I'd gone through all of this training. And here I was faced with the exact stuff that I'd been trained to face. And I was terrified and I got addicted. My addictions flared up, and I was watching at one point maybe 8 to 10 hours of tarot readers on YouTube. Tarot readers on YouTube. Like I had this huge aha moment at one day. It was like 10 a.m. in the morning, and I'd been up since like 4 a.m. because I wasn't sleeping well. And my phone battery was already dead. And here I was having to charge my phone and deciding, okay, I guess I'll take a shower. And I didn't have my phone in the shower because I'd resorted to like watching tarot readings in the shower. That's how not alone. That's how much I didn't want to feel those feelings. And there I was in the shower, like without the distractions, without that last thing. And it started to seep in, the desire and the need for self-care, for what that really meant for me, started to seep in. And I felt it and I heard it. And I actually heard, Christina, what are you running away from? Like, what are the feelings that you have been trying so hard to ignore? Where are the parts of you that you have been putting on the side and ignoring while you entertain the front of your brain with all of this nonsense? It's like emotional masturbation, seriously. Like, I was just emotionally masturbating for hours every day, trying to find some level of comfort away from these emotions, and it wasn't self-care. It was not. And so what I found, I made it a bargain. I was in the bargaining stage. I made a bargain with the voice in my head that told me that I was running away, and I said, no, I'm not. I am not addicted. I can stop this anytime. I'm going to go downstairs and I'll sit on the couch without my phone, and for 15 minutes I won't even look at it. Well, the negotiations continued. I had to get an extension cord to put my phone right on the edge of the couch so that I could be close to it, just in case someone called me or whatever, a notification would come in. I know this. And there I was sitting on my couch, and not even 30 seconds, maybe a minute passed, and the emotions just started. They got me. They came. I felt them. And so in that moment, I was overwhelmed with all those feelings I didn't want to feel. These parts of me that I was ashamed to acknowledge, the parts of me that I thought I was too smart, too savvy, like too right and good. I don't know what I thought, but it was breaking my identity. Every tear broke my identity more and more and more. And I surrendered. And I surrendered. Like, I'm afraid. I need help. I'm scared. I don't want to feel these things. And it's funny because last fall, the quote that became so clear to me that I got from this book, the quote I got was, if you're willing to feel everything, you can do anything. And there were these feelings I still wasn't willing to feel. And I had stated to myself, like, where are those things? I want to feel them. I'm ready. I'm courageous. And the greatest act of self-care that I gave myself was actually sitting on that couch and holding myself and just telling myself that all of these feelings are okay, that I'm still a lovable person, and I'm still a beautiful soul, and I'm still this incredible human, no matter what I'm feeling in this moment, no matter what my brain is telling me is true that I clearly know is not, but feel so deeply. And while I was crying, I began this different perception of my reality. I actually came to this place of peace. And so what I wanted to share about self-care had to do with really caring for the parts of us that feel the feelings that we deny. And just recognizing we are biological, hormonal, incredible humans that are feeling so many things that we pretend we don't, that we refuse to discover, and that when we actually feel them and love ourselves within that, that's when the self-care truly began for me.
100%. I have to completely agree with that. I was in the middle, the same, not exactly the same, but a similar thing happened to me too. Last year, I was in the middle of my marriage falling apart, right? And it was happening in a way that triggered my deepest, darkest wounds. And I'm smiling about this now because it was such a useful, I guess that's the best word I can find right now. It was the perfect circumstance to bring me to the point to where I had to face my deepest, darkest wounds, the fear of abandonment, the fear of being rejected, the fear of not being preferred, all these fears. And ultimately, this victim mentality that I knew was there and I was trying to work through it, right? And to transcend it for all those years, knowing that it was there, and finally having this opportunity. And there is something to that, because I had been for my whole life, because I was considering the perspective of other people and I was focused on how this would affect other people. I held back my anger, my rage in the face of what I perceived to be a huge injustice, which turned out to be the greatest gift of my life, right? So in that moment, for me to be able to then face it and to allow myself to scream, to punch the door, to allow that rage to flow through. And I wasn't hurting any other people. I was not punching other people, but I allowed that emotion to express itself. And for the first time in my life, I realized that if I do that, it's okay. If I allow myself to express that, it doesn't have to get, it doesn't have to become this thing that like this constant vibration inside of my body that's like almost like stuck. Like it's almost like holding a part of myself back. I am a fire. And there is something good about like standing up in the face of an injustice. There is something about standing in your power and speaking the truth, even if it comes from a place of heightened emotions. And if you're in a relationship, and that's the beautiful thing, because when you begin to do this, this is one of those things that aligns you automatically with delightful relationships, because the people that are going to accept you with all of your fire, with all of your dynamic sides to yourself, with your highs and your lows, who just accepts you where you're at and for who you are, you're going to attract those people when you are embodying a person who does that. Because the truth is, it is always okay and it is always safe to express yourself. And you allow the people that don't accept that to fall away. So anyway, I love that. Is there anything else you want to say about self-care before we go to the next step? Because I love that really focused on like that, allowing ourselves to feel the feels.
Well, from my perspective, all relationship stems from the relationship we have with ourselves. I definitely had parts of me that I was projecting onto other people so that I didn't have to be that. Like I get to blame someone else for being that because I don't want to own that that's how I'm actually being to parts of me. And this part of me that was sort of maybe, I guess, ashamed of some of these emotions, or like I had a part of me that was like, Christina, girl, you got it going on. Like I definitely had all of those parts of me and I was very proud of those parts. But I also had parts of me that were like, and because you got it going on, you're definitely not going to acknowledge the parts of you that are super ultra insecure and super ultra afraid of X, Y, and Z. We're not going to acknowledge those. Those are going to be, we're just going to keep them quiet, keep them well fed, keep them entertained. Let's not pay attention to them because these parts are far better and well accepted by you. And so I totally had projected some of these characters onto other people in my life. And I was producing disharmonic relationships in my life because I refused to own those parts of me. I refused to be in right relationship with myself around those parts of me because I couldn't even identify with them. They weren't even a part of my identity. And when I started recognizing, oh my goodness, okay, this on a theoretical level, that every single person you see in your world is a reflection of you in some way. Maybe a piece of you that you've decided isn't you, but in some way, this is a truth that we know is true. So why are they still showing up? And why do you still feel that you're not that? What's going on here? And so primarily that relationship with myself, what became the thing that has actually created all of the alignment with the same exact people. The people in my world have not changed, but the relationships I have with those people have dramatically been impacted because I started taking an inventory of the characters within me. And I began sitting them down and looking them in the eye and being like, you know what? Sometimes you act like a raging blah, blah, blah. And I love you anyway. I understand and value what your role is in my life and why I failed to identify with you. And guess what? I still love you because there's a part of me that knows that accepting you creates the alignment in my outside world that I'm looking for.
And that's what it is. I love that. It's an acceptance, it's a non-judgment, it's an allowing, and there's courage to it, to be willing to see your own faults and to love yourself anyway. And that's so beautiful. I love how you said that. So let's go on to the next tip that we have for aligning with delightful relationships. And it's really honoring the journey and taking the next best step is really all you really need to focus on. I think a lot of what's going on in the world right now is creating this awakening, like I was saying, in our relationships. And a lot of times we can be overwhelmed with it. And if we have an awakening, like the emotions that we feel and the aspects of ourselves that we don't want to see, but suddenly we're aware of because we're almost forced to see our own faults and how we are bringing certain energies to certain dynamics in our relationships, it's less about knowing that things need to change and knowing each step of the way. And you have so much more freedom to focus on the outcome that you want. Choose what you want to feel in your relationships. Choose how you want to embody yourself in relationships, right? Because we're always evolving, we're always changing. We can choose how we want to evolve and change. And just allow the surrendering of the process as you just make the next right decision, the next best step. That keeps things a lot more simple than knowing, for example, oh my gosh, all of my friends that I spend the most time with are not healthy. They're not anywhere where I want to go. I need to change it. Where am I going to find friends? What's going on? And like losing yourself in the overwhelm of that. Or like realizing, okay, my marriage isn't healthy. I'm making shifts in my life. My marriage could fall apart. What's the process? I don't know, like all the steps of and where we're going to end up. But you can focus on the outcome, and you don't need to say, okay, I want my marriage to end in divorce, or I want my marriage to end in anything. This is something that I can speak from experience. I got to a point in my previous marriage. I chose, I'm going to heal my stuff. I'm going to become, and I love this, it's called a noble gas, and it's in the book called, oh my gosh, now my brain is like not even, the honeymoon effect. And the book's all about how you can experience a honeymoon in every stage of your life, no matter where you are, right? And it has to do with becoming this noble gas. And what a noble gas is, if you look at like the periodic table, is a molecule that is complete. It has all the electrons that it wants. It doesn't want to give any or take any. It is happy. It is fulfilled. And this became my mission for myself. In the face of things falling apart around me, I realized I want to become a whole, happy, healthy, complete person. And my outcome then that I decided was that the relationship that I'm going to be in, the romantic partner that I will have, will also be a whole, healthy, happy person. And we are going to have a noble gas relationship. And I love the example of the molecule neon. Neon is a noble gas. When a neon gets together with another neon and they end up intertwining their electrons, it creates an exponential energetic output. And that's what we can have in the world, in the relationships, in the friendships that we have, in our romantic relationships that we have, in our business relationships. If we're coming as whole, complete, healthy people, we can add so much more value around us. And it's like, and the relationship isn't this like, oh, I need this from you, I need this from you, and this like, or I need to overgive, overgive, overgive. It can be this like unhealthy balance otherwise. If there's two whole, healthy, happy people coming together with their lives fulfilled, then you come together and it's like icing on the cake for each other. It's this beautiful, beautiful, loving dynamic where you both can give out of overflow and you're not running out. And you can own your mistakes and you can own your feelings and you can accept the other person where they're at without needing to change them or control them in any way. It's beautiful. So that's been my experience. And it can mean that a relationship can end up splitting apart like mine did. It can mean that a relationship ends up coming together on a whole new level when you do dedicate yourself to becoming that whole person and being on that journey, because ultimately it is a lifelong journey, but there's stuff we can do now. And that involves the next right step. Christina, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, I love what you said about the whole noble gases. Or is that what, yeah, noble gases.
Yeah, noble gas, yeah.
Yes, so these are concepts that I was also well aware of and had to get a little bit of a a little bit of a humbling. I was going to use some bad words, but I'm not going to. I got something handed to me, basically. And so for me, on that day that I was surrendering, I was in a pretty, really, really low state. It was a very low energy state, and it was like I finally surrendered to just dropping all the way into the bottom of the things I was afraid of. And while I was there in that surrendered state, um, something sort of miraculous started happening. And I started to imagine what it would feel like if there was the most ideal being holding me and petting my face and letting me cry in their lap. I started imagining that. For me, that was like the next step. I have a very vivid imagination, and the thing I needed the most at that moment when I was laying and sobbing on my couch was I needed to imagine that there is a presence that was holding me in unconditional love, petting my hair and telling me that no matter what, that they loved me. And in that moment, that's exactly what my imagination helped me to experience. And from that place, I was able to surrender even more deeply. And it was very raw and very real for me to be in this imaginal space. And I feel so grateful that I acknowledged what I truly needed in that moment. I was not ashamed of feeling like I needed that. I needed unconditionally loving a lap to lay in and cry. That's what I needed. And even though there was no tangible person there, my imagination delivered it. And it more than delivered. In fact, it over delivered to the point where I actually began imagining this idealized imaginary boyfriend. Like, quarantine was long for me, friends. Like, let me just tell you, I created an imaginary, beautiful, amazing, perfect boyfriend. And he was all the things that I'd ever decided I'd ever wanted in a partnership. He said all the things, he laughed, his collarbones tasted like salt. Like, it was like so tangible and so juicy and so amazing. And I'll admit, like, I've had several teachers along my path, and there was a teacher that I was like channeling, and I'll mention her name because I believe that we're all in community together. Her name is AJ Bieber, and a long time ago she told me that sacred masculine is the relationship that I have with me. It's my sacred masculine. It's not some external man that's going to be this perfect person. It's going to be a relationship I cultivate on my own, to where I'm feeling the resonance of that without the need for a physical person in my presence. And that's what began on that day that I surrendered. I began this relationship with this imaginary boyfriend, and before this moment, when I was really in that poor state, and when I was in the distraction and trying to keep neutrality in my life, something that I was doing was I purchased an air fryer. And when you purchase an air fryer, guess what? You can get frozen tater tots by the gigantic bag, and you can get frozen chicken nuggets, dino bites. And guess what? All you got to do is pour that into the air fryer, turn it on for 15 minutes, and bam, you got a fried meal ready and hot. And that is what I'd been living on for a couple of weeks. I don't know how, maybe longer. Time started warping. And so in that moment that I finally surrendered, and I was no longer numbing myself, and I was no longer just trying to make all the feelings, even hunger, go away. This imaginary boyfriend was like, well, what do you want to do next? You can do anything you desire. What do you want to do next? And I was like, oh gosh, I would love like a delicious, let's share a meal together. And he's like, let's go. We can buy whatever you want. Let's go to the grocery store. What do you want? And so we went to the grocery store, and I got smoked salmon and arugula. And I actually saved a lot of money just eating frozen food for the last few weeks and never going anywhere. So I had the resources I need, no problem. And I went home. And so the next best step for me was to create this incredible meal. And I was imagining that while I'm eating that meal, that is the meal that I was eating with this imaginary boyfriend. And he was loving it. Every bite, he's like, taste it better. I want to taste it. Like, so I'm like eating, and I'm like, ooh, do you taste that? Like, I brought all this sensuality into these meals with this so here I am, circumstances haven't changed. I'm alone in quarantine. No longer my YouTube usage went from 8 to 10 hours a day to less than 1 hour, less than an hour a day of the phone generally, because I started acting as if. And that was the next best step for me. That was like, I was not in an ideal relationship. I did not have some perfect boyfriend in my world that was complete and whole with me. Like, this was not what was happening. In fact, like, this is part of what I needed in order to begin understanding what being complete and whole myself actually meant. What does it mean to love myself the way that I idealize loving? And this is how it started. And it didn't last exactly like that. It actually started becoming more integrated with me. But that was me taking the next step. Like, it was so simple. It was down to like the imagination I was using and the food I was putting in my body. Like, and the allowing myself to relax into this loving lap on my couch and take a nap and really rest. These were the next best steps for me when I was in my lowest place. And it also didn't include me calling anybody. Like, I didn't feel compelled to like call out for help, because I had a lot of people I could call, but that wasn't what I needed to receive. It was something inside of me that I needed to begin receiving and doing for myself. And so those were for me what those next steps looked like. And it escalated from there. Like, letting this imaginary boyfriend ask me, what do you want to do next? What do you desire next? Like, that word desire, like, tell me what you desire. We're going to do anything you desire. That was what started me taking the next steps, because geez, well, we'll do what, if we're going to do whatever I desire, let's do it, you know?
Right? So. I love that. I've been doing that because I remember you telling me about that like a long time ago. And I've been doing some of that. And just the other day, I took myself out to dinner and I bought myself a drink, and I just had the best time. Like, but there is something to that. Like, it's this divine masculine like archetype that it has nothing to do necessarily with like a physical, like biological gender that we live in this world with. We integrate both masculine and feminine in us. And I think sometimes we ignore one or the other in our lives, whether it's a cultural thing, whether it's social conditioning, whether it's a certain religion that we were tied to or are tied to, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. We can very much get lost in what we think we should be like. And then we lose sight of these parts of us. So I love that, because there is something to that. I think for me in my life, a huge part of that self-care is allowing myself to relish in myself, allowing myself to delight in me, allowing myself to take myself out to dinner and cherish myself, and to do those things for me, and to be my own arms that I cry into from that masculine standpoint. I love that. And I love how you say it integrates more as you do it, to become more of a whole, healthy person. And I think self-care in that way is an incredible next step, is to acknowledge that side of us, that whether it's the masculine or the feminine, how can they become more integrated and more whole and healthy? So I love that. I would love to go on to number 3, and I want everyone to stick around if you can to the end, because both Christina and I have some really cool announcements that we want to share. We haven't done much public talk on these things that we have. And some of you may have seen my post, but I've got something new to share about that. But the step number 3 and tip number 3 is about your community, and is about who you're surrounding yourself with. And if it's the realization that you're having right now that friends need to shift, it's that knowledge that your friends are like an elevator. This is my favorite quote from someone that I once met, Eduardo Verástegui. He's this Mexican actor, and I was helping promote a movie in Dallas. He told me, your friends are like an elevator. It's either going up or it's going down. And that has stuck with me for life, because it made me more conscious of who I'm surrounding myself with, because who you surround yourself with is either going to lift you up or take you down. And so that there's an awareness to that. It's okay, when I'm with this person, where's my energetic state with that? How do I feel? And is it something that I can shift in myself? Again, going to that self-care, becoming that whole person, and using it as a mirror. But also, if something does need to shift, if there is an outcome that you want to have, like whether it's like, okay, I want to have delightful relationships. Well, who are the people that you know of? It could be an author of a book. It can be a teacher. It can be someone on YouTube. Who has these attributes that I want to achieve, and that I would want to ride an elevator with and go up, right? And those are the people that you spend most of your time with. Your inner circle are the top like 4 to 7 people that you spend the most time with. And it doesn't have to be people that you know in person, or people that you even meet over like a Zoom video or on Facebook. It can be an author whose book you read. And you can spend a few hours with that person by reading their autobiography, or by reading a book that they've written, or by going to a teacher and taking their course, or by watching a certain documentary that delights you. There's so many ways that you can do that. Your community is huge, and having people around you that support you, that accept you for who you are. But the reason that this is step number 3 is because it's important to see this as from a place of I too am becoming a whole and healthy person. It is not just blaming the people around me and, oh, it's everyone around me that is the reason that I am experiencing life the way that I am. There's an ownership to that, but there's also something we can strive for in who we consciously choose to spend our time with. And even millionaires say this, right? If you are at the million mark in terms of your net worth, and you're having trouble rising above that, you know, I've heard this anecdote, and I don't remember where it was from. That person was asked, oh, you can't get above $1 million. Well, what is the net worth of the people that you're spending the most of your time with? And they're like, oh, everyone is $1 million or below. Start spending time with people who have a higher net worth. That's it. And it has to do with our frequencies. What frequency do you want to attune to? Who do you want to align with? And that can be a huge, huge help. Also owning our own stuff too. So Christina, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, yeah, I love what you said about paying attention to the just the thought paradigms of the people that we're hanging out with, because I knew that there were some people in my world that I knew that I could get them to agree with my stories. Like I knew that I could call them and I could share my little sob story and they would agree with me and they would tell me the things I wanted to hear and they would tell me, ooh, yeah, like blah 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 about like some external circumstance. And I was, because I was in such a vulnerable state and because a part of me really craved that old story, that old like sort of victim-y triangle, I knew that I had to be very deliberate about who I actually shared my vulnerability with. And I chose people who I knew understood that there was no such thing as a victim, a perpetrator, or a savior. I had to choose those people because the truth was, I didn't need anyone to save me. I wasn't a victim of anything. And I understood that I wasn't a perpetrator in my life either, that I wasn't trying to punish myself and I didn't need to be saved from myself or anyone else. So I was very, very careful because I knew how seductive that triangle could be. And I knew some of the people who were still kind of dabbling with that triangle, who were still, kind of comfortable with that paradox, still working out the different character roles that they could play there. So I chose deliberately to, when I did start reaching out to people, to speak to people who understood that we are the creators of our life. And there are many people out there who understand this on a theoretical level and are still practicing it in some of their roles. And I am one of those people, and I know I'm not ashamed to say that there are still a couple of roles that I've still been playing that little triangle out with. And I look at them and oh, you're so sweet. This little, like, I have compassion for you. You're still working it out. It's okay. But the people I chose to talk to, I definitely was like, listen, I'm just wanting to associate with outside of this triangle right now. I'm just wanting to see the bigger picture of this. I'm trying to see the soul level of what's happening in my world, not the role level, because I understand that all of these roles and characters are a version of me. And so that when you were talking about like choosing your peer group, I knew that my ticket to completeness was to step out of the triangle and choose to speak to people that didn't encourage the triangle. And so, that was how I protected that very vulnerable state that I was in. And I'm so grateful I did. And the really bizarre thing is that the characters that I was interplaying with in some of these roles, those characters, what I learned is every time I'm in the presence of someone, they are a new person. The only thing that still exists is how deeply attached I am to the story I have of them. They're actually a new person every time I see them, and I'm a new person every time I see them. We are always new every single time. And so, someone who could have been felt like the elevator energy went down when I was hanging out with them in the past, when I don't bring that story with me into our new present moment and I let them just be new in who they are and I'm new in who I am, responding to what's literally happening, not stories that I've attached to behaviors, magically the energy increases in those relationships. And I am experiencing alignment with my ex-husband, with my ex-lover, with people that I've been out of touch with for a long, long time that are now in my life again. And the relationships are new and fresh. They're like fresh every time. We're bringing that beginner eye every time to each other, and I'm setting that precedence. And so that's another piece to who we associate with. And I felt like when I was very vulnerable, I needed to make sure I was associating with people who saw through the triangle, who knew that triangle was just a way for our egos to work out certain karmic lessons or whatever you want to call it. It was just a way to work out certain roles so that I could understand what it felt like to be in each of these corners. And so now we're stepping into this next tier, and in the next tier there's plenty of people who are ready, willing, and able to help you see through the bullshit of the story. And all it is being congruent with our own. That's all it is.
I love that. I love that. And to clarify, this next tier is literally this new level of consciousness that's emerging within humanity, and it's this observable phenomena. And it has to do with spiral dynamics and the whole study of different like memes that travel through humanity and different mindsets, and kind of how we're coming to this culmination of like all these different perspectives are coming to a head right now. And this emergence of this new second tier where there's just an abundance for everyone. And as opposed to, you know, the previous tiers where there could have been a lack, or we need to follow certain rules. And so that just gives, hopefully that gives a little bit more clarity. It's pretty fascinating if you ever want to study that. But I do want, I love what you shared, Christina. And it's so true. The best people that we can have as our elevator, right, are the people who are going to call us out call us out on our bullshit, okay? To just say it for real. Those are the friends that I really love the most, in the sense that they don't allow me to, and they call me out. They don't allow me to lie to myself. They don't allow me to fool myself. They're like, well, actually, have you seen that when you do this, it's actually, you're playing this dynamic out, and you've been saying that you don't want to do that anymore. I'm just like, well, crap, yeah. And I have friends doing that to me today, which is awesome, because it does. It may not be comfortable to acknowledge that. But like Christina, you're and my mentor, Donnie Epstein, says, comfort is the enemy of greatness. So sometimes having people in our life that call us out, there's a discomfort to that, but that's real love. The lack of love enables you to continue in that bad behavior, and not to necessarily judge that the person doesn't love you. They just might not be in that space, that awareness, again, that frequency that you want to be at. So it's just really, it's something to have awareness over. But I love what you said, Christina, about bringing your own energy to the dynamic, because if you come expecting the person to be new, and you come without any of the stories from the past, like you said, it gives the energetic a whole new opportunity to shift, and that dynamic to change too. So we have more, I want to say, power over the dynamics of our relationships than just putting all the energy and the blame and the judgment on how a person is or how they were in the past. We can add so much more to that. So anyway, I invited everybody to stay to the end. I do want to mention, Christina, that you have a book, and it's in pre-release right now. Is that correct? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I committed. I've been writing this book for over 10 years, but I didn't know exactly what it was. And then I finally committed to completing it last year in September. And so I've been writing it, and you know, what's magical is when we tell our story, the story changes. and and bringing a future perspective into something that we perceive happened in the past sort of changes everything. And so this book started out, it's a fiction. It's about this woman named Isabella, who she sits down to write something she calls an esoteric erotic novel. She's exploring her sensuality. She has a very vivid imagination, and she's got all of this desire and sexual energy. And so she decides she's going to write this esoteric erotic novel. And what she immediately runs into is her own relationship with shame. And she has to write through this and unravel where this shame came from. And actually, she does this process of time travel through her emotional body to revisit scenes from the past where nuggets of shame entered. And she does that, it changes the story of her life, and it sort of unravels this initiation. And she starts to see that, oh my gosh, these people she was in relationship, they are gatekeepers. They're gatekeepers to certain gates of initiation that she's been walking through toward her expression, her fullest sovereign expression of her true divine desire. And so the book has been transforming my life. And I think that's why I've had so much access to a lot of these themes that I've been processing and being present to, through this character and her story that's come alive through the story. And so the book is now in a completion phase. It's being edited as we speak. I'm working every day on like, not, I wouldn't call it working, I'm creating through like moving the segments around. I've got some layers of astrology and tarot that are sort of woven in between these initiation processes. And so there's some of this finessing and weaving that I'm doing now, but it is in the pre-sale. We can include a link in the comments if you're interested in purchasing a copy. It is due out this fall, and it's very exciting. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk about that.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I already pre-ordered mine, so I can't wait to get it in the mail. It sounds so amazing. It sounds delectable, and it sounds so like, it sounds so new, and like I cannot wait to read it. I cannot wait to read it. So I do want to make an announcement. You may have seen some posts on my Facebook page that I am launching this course, Victim to Victory, Transcend Toxic Relationships. And for those who have gotten a lot of value out of our talk today, I'm going to be diving really deep into the whole process of aligning with delightful relationships from that space of acknowledging where we're at, and in being in that victim mentality, and being in that space of just giving your power away and losing yourself in a relationship, in a dynamic that is not healthy. And so I invite everybody, the first 5 people that sign up starting now are going to get, that sign up for the course, are going to get a free hour with me, one-on-one. In addition to the course that you can use, you can kind of pick the week within the course, because it's a 5-week course, when you want to do that with me, depending on where you're at, if you want assistance in that week. So if you want more information about that, send me a message directly on Messenger. I will give you the link. It's also listed in Victorious Life Collective in that group. And I'm really excited. It's only the first 5 people, so I would recommend signing up for that sooner rather than later. And I cannot wait, Christina. I think we should do something like this again. I think this was a lot of fun. And I'm looking to see if anyone asked any questions. We didn't get any questions. So is there anything else you want to say before we finish up?
I'm just super grateful to be here and having this conversation. Anytime I get an opportunity to speak with like minds and peers, I feel really, really grateful. And you're a beautiful soul. And I know that you're helping so many women in this arena. And so I'm really grateful to you.
Thank you, Christina. Yeah, and I love the work that you do, and I really look forward to, I want to see you speak in Colorado sometime soon, maybe in Denver. I just really look forward to that too, because I know you're going to be having some speaking engagements coming up. So I'm hoping that there's some close to me. If not, I'm just going to have to travel. But anyway, yes, I'm so grateful for this opportunity. I love it. Is so energizing, and there's so much value we give when we get together with the people that bring more delight to our life. So like I said before, you're one of those. So thank you for being my friend, and thank you for doing this with me. And I hope that this spreads more delight to more people. So
thank you.
A lot of fun. Thank you, guys.